as we speak. We're mobilising up to 700 officers with dozens of search warrants across the country simultaneously, over 20 here in New South Wales.
It's 3 a.m. and AFP officers are leaving the headquarters in Sydney for a series of pre-dawn raids as part of Operation Kraken. The prime target, a 32-year-old man police allege is the mastermind of an encrypted communication network used solely by the criminal underworld. Police raided the home of Jay Je Yoon Jung, where he lives with his parents in the suburb of Narwee in southwest Sydney.
They set off a couple of flashbangs or something, those sort of grenades designed to disorientate you.
It's really important to get entry to the house very quickly. The administrator has the ability to wipe the communications on the system as an administrator.
The AFP says the unassuming 32-year-old has no prior criminal history, had a regular day job and loved karaoke.
Well, he's a computer geek, but we'll allege he was driven by profit.
Jay Je Yoon Jung has been charged with supporting a criminal organisation, benefiting from proceeds of crime and dealing in identification information. He did not apply for bail today.
This is the first dedicated encrypted platform that has been run out of Australia, been created here and administered from this country. There's been a number of significant platforms taken down by law enforcement globally over the last few years, and this is the first for Australia.
The AFP will spend the next few days combing through Jung's home.
On this platform, we've seen Hells Angels, Comancheros, Bandidos, Middle Eastern organised crime, Italian organised crime, and Korean organised crime.
The encrypted app is called Ghost, which the AFP allege Jung created when he was just 23 years old. Ghost was advertised as being tamper-proof.
In effect, we infected the devices, enabling us to access the content on Australian devices. Once again, Australian organised crime has been outsmarted by very dedicated and intelligent members in the AFP.
It's alleged Jung had 8 resellers servicing Australia and others globally to sell his ghost messaging app that was installed on phones. The cost of a handset was almost $2,500 and came with a 6-month subscription. The AFP says more than 800 devices were used by some of the most serious criminals, with nearly 400 users in Australia.
We'll be alleging that this platform is solely being used for criminality and serious organised crime, drug trafficking, drug importation, tobacco trafficking, firearms trafficking, money laundering, and really concerningly, those threats to life and to harm.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Come on through.
Commander Paula Hudson is head of AFP operations and says the force has been aware of Ghost for 7 years. But it was only in March when the AFP managed to finally crack the app. Since then, they've monitored 125,000 messages sent between criminals.
We were able to develop a technical innovation to infiltrate the platform. In the users' handsets and devices, we were able to capture messages sent and received, photographs, videos as they were taking place. So, for want of a better word, we've been sitting in the back pocket of organised crime.
Have you managed to stop crimes from occurring by monitoring these messages?
Yeah, absolutely. Through the lifetime of this operation, we have intervened in 50 threats to life, and that is 50 people that we have intervened from serious harm or death for this operation.
On one occasion, we could see over the platform an image of a person who had a firearm to their head. We had an hour in which to respond to that threat and pass that information to our state and territory partners to mitigate that threat.
The messages on the app have resulted in 46 arrests across Australia. So far, dozens of people have been charged with offences including illicit drug trafficking, supporting a criminal organisation and firearm charges.
This is how we package the exhibits to ensure that put the seals on them and tape it all up to ensure that the integrity of the exhibit. So I'll just open it up.
Chris is part of the AFP's technical team and showed 7:30 how the app worked.
You can see it's very similar to a regular messaging chat platform. Chats here, people's names. You can create your own chat group and type a message just as you would with regular messaging applications. So very easy to use, very customisable to how your needs.
The AFP alleges Jung took control of vetting and approving users of his platform and even provided continued tech support.
This platform in particular, you can only talk to each other if you have the application. The handles are anonymous, so it provides a high level of comfort and confidence to criminal syndicates that they are operating with, with impunity.
We'll take you into the digital forensics examiners labs where they...
In 2021, the AFP was tipped off that an Australian had created and was the administrator of Ghost.
French gendarmerie brought it to the attention of the Europol Operational Task Force and the AFP that we had a significant element as part of this particular platform. And then we joined together with our international partners to, target the platform once we had identified a solution or a way to get into the platform.
The AFP says it was only 6 months ago when their technical team, who they proudly refer to as Uber nerds, managed to infiltrate Ghost.
So this is our hardware engineering workshop. So these...
Technical Commander Rob Nelson heads up the team.
Some of our techs were able to identify the opportunity to use the access to these devices for us to be able to infiltrate the network and access those devices and the information that was on them.
Has this been done before?
I'm not aware of anyone else utilising this methodology from a law enforcement perspective.
Since infiltrating the app, the AFP says they've seized more than 210 kilograms of illicit drugs, 26 weapons and $1.2 million in cash during the raids. The evidence seized at the raids will be brought back to DNA-locked labs like this around the country to be analysed. It's a phase of the operation known as the forensic tail, and depending on the volume and complexity of what's seized, the testing could take months.
We're expecting a variety of firearms. We've seen a large amount of commercially made firearms, but also as there's been a large growth in privately manufactured firearms recently, we're expecting quite a few 3D printed firearms, as well as just generically homemade.
What are you trying to find when you're analysing the firearms?
Initially, the base of our job is just classifying the firearms, but as firearms are such a precursor for connecting to other crimes, that it's such a great linking evidence that we're able to use. And yeah, through the use of fired components in our testing, we're able to make potential links to other crimes.
What do you do with the phone?
We will perform extractions on the phones. Using our hardware and software, we will gain a copy of the data of those phones at that point in time, and we'll display it using a software, and we'll be able to investigate and look through those extractions rather than looking through the devices themselves.
Operation Kraken follows the AFP and FBI's worldwide investigation into another encrypted messaging platform, Anom. Almost 400 people were arrested and charged as part of Operation Ironside.
The AFP had actually taken control of that criminal platform and was for some 3 years intercepting and capturing the messages of criminals using that platform.
The lawfulness of Ironside has been challenged. Commander Nelson believes the AFP is in a good legal position with this operation.
We move into the prosecution phase, and that in itself is a significant body of work in not only, really in terms of the fact that now we have to put what we've done before court and demonstrate to them the method in which we've employed and give confidence that that was lawful.
The ripple effect from Operation Kraken will be felt globally, with more arrests expected in coming days. But the AFP is already setting its sights on new targets. Are you concerned that another app is just going to pop up and replace it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the impact of Operation Kraken is, we want to erode the confidence of organised crime in using these platforms. They will pivot to look to new or even old ways of communicating, but that's up to us to stay one step ahead, and we are staying a step ahead.
Ian McCartney is the AFP's Deputy Commissioner Crime. Deputy Commissioner, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
What is it about Ghost that makes serious organised criminals prefer it to other encrypted platforms that our viewers might be familiar with, like WhatsApp or Signal? What features did it offer?
Well, exactly that. It's not like WhatsApp and those other platforms. In effect, it's a closed club, and it's been undertaken by criminals in terms of participation for a range of really serious offences.
But I think in the briefing notes it was saying that it offered people the capacity to distort their voices and everything.
Very clever in terms of messaging disappearing, distortion of voices, a lot of capability and facilities it offered.
The 32-year-old man charged as the alleged mastermind and administrator of Ghost, what do you believe motivated him?
Organised crime is driven by profit, Laura. There's significant profit related particularly to the drug trade, and significant funds available. So there was a service to offer, we're alleged, to organised crime to help facilitate organised crime, both not just in Australia. This was a service offered overseas in terms of in Italy, in Canada and also in Ireland.
Well, the alleged mastermind was hacked by the AFP. Is it just me that finds that deeply ironic, or was your infiltration impossible to detect?
I think we're blessed by some of the people we have working in the AFP, Laura. This was extremely clever, innovative and really long hours to crack this case. So it was a combination of receiving information from our international partners, so that's really important in terms of the work that we do in this space, particularly from the French in this case. That provided in some respects in relation to this case. And I think the AFP, in terms of its technical team, were able to develop a technical solution to unencrypt those messages for a 6-month period and provide a window into serious criminality in Australia, but also overseas.
Well, could we just talk about the timeline of getting to today? The platform's been there for almost 10 years. You've known about it, I think, for about 7. You've had an opportunity to target it since 2022, but you've only been able to crack it since March. What does that all mean for how much information you've been able to collect along the way?
It highlights it's been in existence for a number of years. It's been a slow burn. It was, in terms of the early uptake, the uptake in relation to this device is increased over the last, I think, 12 months. But I think what it highlights is the difficulty for law enforcement to get behind the veil, to unencrypt these messages to see what's happening on these sorts of platforms. And for us to highlight how difficult it was to crack this case.
So essentially in 2022 you were able to sort of see that it was there, but then it's taken all of this time, or it took until March at least, to get into it.
It took until March, yeah.
And this is the people who've been described as the Uber nerds that work for the AFP?
Yeah, I probably don't think they like that description, but that's not far off the mark. There's a really talented bunch that sits in the AFP headquarters in Canberra, focused 24/7 on looking at these issues. The same team that brought you Operation Ironside with the Anom. And again, some of the lessons we learned off that we were able to apply to this case.
So it was only really when you're able to infect the app and get access to content stored on Australian-based phones that you're able to start sort of secretly watching what was going on. Is that right? So you didn't have any access at all before you got that, you started to spread the infection, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about the Holy Grail here. I mean, we identified the device. We identified that the device was being used by criminals. But the huge win for us was the ability to de-encrypt these messages, to identify the level of serious criminality that was occurring, both overseas and also in Australia.
One of the most interesting things about this is you say you've been able to thwart a lot of threats to life, I think about 50 incidents, as well as a lot of serious crime with the information you've gained. What judgment do you make about how long you let that run before you actually say, OK, it's now time to close this down? I mean, is it a question of you can get to a certain point and you sort of think people will realise that you're onto them? Or, I mean, how do you make that really difficult judgment?
I think there's a couple of aspects to this. We all watch movies, we watch Netflix, and, organised crime, there can be a certain amount of glamour attached to it. This is a ruthless, a violent business that drives this trade, Laura, and I think it's really important that we focus on this. I think in terms of threats to life, there were significant threats to life and harm. There were over 50 in relation to these cases. And for us, it's a balancing act.
And that's just since March?
That's just since March. So I think we have set rules in place in terms of how we deal with these. But the key priority for us is we prioritise threats to life and protecting the community over and above evidence collection. So it was very much a case-by-case basis as we worked through this case.
So what sort of people were the resellers of this device? You've said there are about 8 of them in Australia. I presume that they're criminals, but where do they fit into the system, and are they subject to charges after today's events?
Yeah, 5 of those resellers are here and they will be subject to action, and 3 overseas. Organised crime is a business, Laura, and these were part of the business model in terms of disseminating this device to the criminal environment. We'll allege driven by profit and in terms of the activities they undertook.
So how was it lawful to infiltrate this app? Am I right in thinking it was under what's known as the Slade Act, and is that the first and only time that legislation's been used?
Listen, there's prohibitions in terms of what we can disclose in terms of the legislation, but I think what's really important, we acted proportionally and unlawfully. I think we've been well served by Commonwealth governments over the last couple of years in terms of the TOLA legislation and both the Slade legislation, and we have used that legislation in cases in relation to the work that we undertake.
So there were legal issues that were raised and tested and so far have been re-endorsed, if you like, by the Supreme Court in South Australia about Operation Ironside. Are the same sorts of issues likely to be tested in this case? We think this has been a slightly different approach, so I think the arguments will be slightly different, but I think what's important in terms of the organised crime targets that we're going after, Laura, we're talking about the top end of town. They will challenge this on everything. I have no doubt they'll challenge this on this case. We expect it. And finally, the importance of existing relationships in spreading this app. Has the exposure of this platform given you access to an entirely new knowledge of criminal links and networks that you didn't know existed before? Absolutely. I mean, there's intelligence gaps out there, not just for us, but our great working relationships with the state and territory police, the ability to share intelligence and information with them. But also, it's a team sport and it's a team international support. So the work that we've done with our international partners, the ability for us to share information, but importantly, we'll celebrate today, but tomorrow we'll move on to the next case. So the lessons we've learned through this case, I think will be really important for us for the next case. Ian McCartney, thanks so much for talking to us tonight. Thanks, Laura.